Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This episode is Astral Projection through Desire. Before we get into it, real quick, if you'd like to support the work of Astral Club on Patreon, you can get advanced episodes on Sunday, no commercials, and there will be an email where we can talk back and forth and you can ask questions. If you're interested, there'll be a link in the description. Secondly, private lessons for astral projection. If you're interested, perhaps you've never projected before, or perhaps you have projected previously and you just want to increase the quantity and quality of your projections, I'd be glad to work with you. If you'd like more information, you'll find an email in the description where you can request additional data. Okay, let's get started. Astral projection through desire. Now, I know I've talked about that particular subject from time to time, usually as part of an overall episode about the various ways that you can induce astral projection. But this is something that I'd like to spend a little bit more time on because I've noticed that in some cases it can be the astral projection method of last resort. If everything else has failed, this might be one of those ways that you can actually induce an astral projection. So, what do I mean by astral projection through desire? Well, it's really denied desire. Astral projection through denied desires creates a building stress, a stress that will come to the surface of the subconscious mind after you fall asleep. When we're awake, we have desires. We're hungry, so we get up and go to the kitchen and make ourselves a sandwich. We're thirsty, so we go to the refrigerator and get a glass of water. These are very commonly known desires amongst, all human beings. And satisfying those desires, at least in the West, is fairly easy. So the levels of stress that are built up because these desires have been denied, it's very low. Because how hard is it to get a sandwich? How hard is it to get a glass of water to drink? But if you find yourself in a situation, either by your own creation or by some accidental situation, perhaps you decided to go for a hike in the Mojave Desert and you forgot to bring any water bottles with you, and you find yourself in the afternoon shade at 115 or 120 degrees Fahrenheit, you could certainly start feeling some stress building up due to thirst. And that can cause a lot of problems. And if that desire is not satisfied in enough time, you can actually pass away from it. So how can these desires help you to astral project? Well, first, let me discuss 5 basic types of desires that we may be able to use to astral project. The first is pretty much common to all humans. Pretty much all of these are really, and that is sex. Sex is a powerful drive that exists in the vast majority of the human species. I know there's a small, tiny percentage that doesn't experience such a desire, but that's a very small percentage. One of the reasons why our species has been successful is that we have that drive to procreate. Now, when I was a teen, and certainly any people who can remember back to their teen years, and certainly as a male, sex was certainly on your mind. It was never far away from your consciousness. And unless you were an extraordinarily lucky teen, which I certainly was not in this regard, uh, sex isn't something that you typically have a way to deal with, that you have a way to achieve and to eventually then dispense with it for some period of time. So it has a variety of stresses, and of course, everyone knows some different ways that as a younger person who doesn't have a willing sexual partner available to him, there's other ways to at least temporarily assuage that particular burning desire. Now, so what happens when you fall asleep? Well, before we get into that, I just want to mention some of the other ones. Okay, there's sex. Then there's security. You want to feel safe. Third is thirst. Fourth is hunger. And five is strong habits denied. Okay, now let's go back to sex. Sex, as I said before, is a very powerful instinctual need. And it's never far away, especially, as I said, when you're younger. There's that powerful need to procreate. And it can affect you certainly during the day. If you've ever been in a classroom as a young male and all of a sudden you feel a little alert, let me say, in your class. And then the teacher says, "Hey, Rick, go up to the blackboard and solve this problem real quick." So you have this amazing amount of panic that hits you, and then you're like, well, okay, do I go up there and embarrass myself, or do I just take a zero for the day? And then of course you have to make that particular decision, because walking up there as alert as you feel at the time can be a very embarrassing situation. But it's also extremely common. Now, I'm sure women experience something like that too. And I know they have other different problems in the cold and whatever. But sex, okay. So it's an extraordinarily powerful instinct. Now, how can we use it to astral project? Well, an unfulfilled sexual desire doesn't dissipate when you fall asleep. It's still there. And in fact, many of my projections when I was a teenager would start from an unfulfilled sexual desire. I'd find myself flying out of my body, looking for some sort of a female. Now, what I learned through my projections was that if you wish to extend your astral projection, yes, it's great that that unfulfilled sexual desire got you that opportunity, but you have to then master that desire, because if you allow it to take over you, you'll find that your physical body starts responding to this desire now. And you don't want your physical body to start waking up, to start becoming more alive, more active. And that can happen, if there's huge amounts of sexual energy. Because remember, you're still connected by the astral cord here. So these impulses can go two different ways here. And I found that the best thing for me to do, and this required a huge amount of will on my part, especially when I was a teenager, not so much now, but when I was a teenager, most definitely. And you have to master that instinct, that impulse, and then allow it to cool down, and then go on your actual astral projection goal or desire. Because you have to, yes, the impulse can get things going for you. But if you allow it to take over your entire astral consciousness, you're just going to end up having a short projection. So if you wish to have an extended projection and you wish to accomplish, traveling somewhere distantly to the moon or somewhere on Earth or in time, you have to master it. Otherwise, you'll find yourself getting pulled back to your body. You might remember as a younger person, you would have dreams that had a sexual component to them. And normally, I think you'll find that they probably didn't last too long because you ended up waking up because it caused a stimulation that that ended up having your physical body awaken, and that's one thing we definitely don't want to do. But sex can be a powerful double-edged sword with astral projection. But if you can manage to use it to get started out of your body and then to exert will and have control over it, you can find yourself astral projecting, whereas before perhaps you weren't successful. Next up is security. I recall, I'm someone that inherited some OCD impulses from my father. Now, I've been able to get control of them to the point now where they play a very minor role in my life. At this stage of the game, it's pretty much before I go to bed, I just check the locks, twice to make sure everything's locked and the alarm is set, and then I can go to bed. So it's not something that major league impacts my life. It's just a couple extra minutes a day, that I have to do before I can go to sleep. But I have used it before to cause an astral projection. For instance, I used to do quite a bit of travel when I was in business. And what I would do sometimes is I'd find myself falling asleep. And because my routine was disturbed by being in a strange hotel, a strange room, I would sometimes forget to lock the hotel door. Yes, it's locked because it locks automatically, but I'd always want to do all the locks, the chain one and whatever else security lock that you can use. And as I would fall asleep, sometimes I'd run through typical routines and I'd think about, I have to make sure I check the locks. Sometimes, though, I'd end up falling asleep before I actually did that. And in one case that I can recall, I ended up astral projecting to the door to check the locks. And I saw that they weren't properly latched, so I ended up being pulled back to my body, and I got up and then I locked the doors. The point being, though, that because of that stressor, that desire to be secure, to be safe, that it was still there when I fell asleep, and so it propelled me out of my body, doing this action of checking to see whether I was safe in my hotel room, and even for people without OCD, I think security can also be something that perhaps would work for you. Next up is thirst. The desire for water is extremely powerful in humans. We need water. You can go, a physical, healthy person can go an extended period of time without food. However, without water, your survival is numbered in days. And if you find yourself in an extraordinarily hot environment like a desert, your survival is definitely numbered at that point. The human body needs water. So how can we use that particular desire? Well, you can deny yourself water for a period of time. Now, before you engage in this or the one we're going to discuss next, which is hunger, you want to make sure that you are physically healthy without any diseases that might cause problems for you if you denied yourself water for an extended period of time or other nutrition, for instance. You want to make sure that that's not going to cause a problem. And if you're not sure, consult your doctor. You probably don't want to tell them why you're interested in it, but if you think it might be a problem because you have some sort of a health situation, well then fine, check with a physician. However, falling asleep while you're still thirsty can cause a building stress because you're not going to get less thirsty as the night goes through. As a child, I recall many times awakening and finding myself going to the bathroom faucet or what have you because I was thirsty, and then realizing that I couldn't pick up a cup or a glass because I was in my astral body, and then I would then go ahead and astral project. So thirst is certainly a core need, and you can deny yourself, once again, if you're physically healthy, you can deny yourself water for various short periods of time without any major problem. So it's one thing to that you can experiment with. Next up is hunger. So when we talk about hunger as a unfulfilled desire, we're talking about fasting. Once again, for normal, healthy people, a 24-hour fast will not injure your health, as long as you don't have diseases like diabetes or what have you. And once again, if you have any questions about that, discuss it with your physician. But let's say in a 24-hour fast, now you've denied your body food, and it's something that it's especially if you you don't live in a country where food is scarce, you're used to satisfying that desire fairly easily. So falling asleep while you are hungry will create an unfulfilled desire. And you may very well find yourself leaving your body in the kitchen trying to access the refrigerator, and you can't, your hand goes through the handle, so you can't open it up. And as soon as that happens, realizing that you're actually astral projecting and then going off and experiencing your astral projection. Number 5, strong habits denied. Now, I do not advise that you develop any of these habits so that you can then deny them in order to astral project, because all of these things can be detrimental to your health. But if you already have these habits, then perhaps you can turn them to something actually positive. By denying their fulfillment, you are building a stressor that can very easily intrude into the subconscious mind as you fall asleep, propelling your astral body to go out searching for a way to fulfill these habits that you have denied yourself. So what are some of these habits? Well, they're all very well known to everyone. The first is drugs, like weed, for instance. If you're someone who uses that on a daily basis. Alcohol, same thing. Tobacco, if you're used to hitting that Juul pretty hard every day and suddenly you stop, I guarantee you that you're going to have stress that is going to build up and build up. Not only a physical stress, but also a psychological stress that will build up. Coffee and tea, to a lesser extent, can fall into that category, as well as sweets. If you're someone who really has a sweet tooth and is used to eating, sugary or whatever desserts on a daily basis. I had a student once who had a burning desire to astral project, but he just nothing worked for him. No matter how hard he tried, various visualizations and exercises and meditations and and you name it, reading books, he could not astral project until I mentioned this particular way of projecting. He was someone who really enjoyed smoking weed, and this was something that had been a regular part of his life, every day of his life, for like the last 10 years. So this was a very much ingrained habit. And I suggested that he stop smoking weed abruptly and that he allow this as a stressor to help him experience astral projection. So I said, take your weed and your other paraphernalia and stick it somewhere in your house, like say perhaps your kitchen, somewhere away from your bedroom. And then as you're falling asleep, tell yourself over and over again that if you project to that weed tonight, you'll then realize you're projecting, you'll have yourself an experience, and then when you return, you will satiate that desire by smoking. In essence, you're offering a devil's bargain of sorts to your subconscious mind that as the stress builds, if it assists you in leaving your body to go to this physical weed, that you will reward it after the projection with a fulfillment of that denied desire. And that can be a very powerful bribe that might just be the extra effort you need to push you over that little hill that is preventing your current astral projections. Okay, that is astral projection through desire. If you found it interesting, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds, subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure that bell is on so you're notified when the twice weekly videos are posted, Wednesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and on Saturday morning at 8:15 a.m. And that is Eastern Time US or New York City time. And as always, I'd like to get your comments and your questions. What do you think about some of these? Do you think any of these would work for you? Or do you have stories associated perhaps with having very vivid dreams or perhaps full-on astral projections that perhaps were induced by the denial of one of these desires? If so, please share it with us and we can all benefit from it. And as always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.